Ventilators have been essential in the fight against the coronavirus. For many critically ill patients, they're the best hope of survival, but not for one veteran. NBC News Now correspondent Alexa Lioto has his story.
As coronavirus sweeps the country, we've heard repeatedly about the value of ventilators to help sick patients with life-threatening respiratory symptoms. But what if you had a pre-existing condition where a ventilator could hurt instead of help you? Heath Robinson served in the Army National Guard for 12 years. He went to war in Iraq, and now he's fighting a new battle, making him high risk.
I have lung cancer, stage 4, non-small cell lung cancer. A couple months ago, I was on Keytruda, and the Keytruda treatment, it's an immune therapy treatment. It unfortunately stopped working for me. So I had to try a different immune therapy, which they tried that didn't work. I got really sick. I got really bad. I was hospitalized for almost a month. I've been on chemotherapy now for 2.5 months.
What did they tell you about coronavirus?
I already have issues with my lungs and breathing and a cough. And so which really makes me nervous, because one of the things that the coronavirus attacks is your lungs. That's why they need ventilators and everything. And my lungs are already very weak and labored, and they have scar tissue and tumors in them right now. And that's something I just can't risk getting that. And that's why my wife was so nervous about being at work that she pretty much quit her job to keep me safe. So the thing that concerned me, and me and my wife had talked about multiple times, is that I literally was just admitted into the hospital 3 different times within the last couple months, and I was like, man, I can't afford to go to the hospital. I can't afford to be around any of that. And with this epidemic coming out, I was like, I don't even know if they'll have room for me. I know the last couple times I went to the hospital, I had to sit there half a day or
in the ER
and wait for a bed to open up.
We've had to be so careful, because if we can't be here to take care of him, who's going to? And if he does go to the hospital, he's going alone, because they aren't allowing visitors, anyone to accompany them, like his last chemo treatment.
What have doctors told you about how you would react to coronavirus?
My lungs, unfortunately, the way they are right now, I can't even be put on a ventilator. And so pretty much if I catch it, unless somehow my immune system and my body can fight it off easily, which is very unlikely being on chemotherapy, it would kill me. I wouldn't survive getting it. I'd be in the death total, most likely, which is very concerning for us. So, which is why that we are been pretty much just isolating ourselves away from everybody. All my friends, I haven't seen any of my friends, and other than doing some of the online stuff, we've done some of the online Zoom. All my friends got together. They went and they surprised me. I have 10 really good friends from high school, and we all got on a big Zoom thing, and they all had these hats made, and on the back side of the hat it says "He's strong."
While the economy is taking a hit during the coronavirus pandemic, the cannabis business is booming. Today is 4/20, a high holiday, if you will, for cannabis enthusiasts. NBC News technology correspondent Jake Ward reports from California.
On 4/20, the unofficial National Day of Marijuana in the United States, people all over the country traditionally gather to smoke and push for increased legalization and listen to music and, well, relax. This 4/20, of course, people are getting together in other ways. But while the celebration may be ruined, the market for marijuana is doing just fine. In all but a few states, dispensaries have been given essential business status. Cannabis delivery and e-commerce services like Weed Maps say marijuana dispensaries saw enormous numbers beginning in mid-March as shelter-in-place orders took effect.
We've seen on some days up to 300% higher order volumes. In fact, just this last Wednesday, I think we saw the highest order volume we've ever seen.
And while traditionally people buy on a Friday, the data shows they're buying it at all hours and days right now.
You're not picking up stuff on your way home from work anymore. You're shopping, whenever you have time in your day.
Of course, smoking anything can be dangerous right now.
Inflammation in the airways is one of the potential risk factors for people who get COVID-19 to potentially go on and get complications of the disease.
Do you think there is a spectrum of risk depending on how people consume it?
The other routes, whether it's edible, topical, probably don't have the same effects on the airways that the inhalational route does.
The good news, perhaps, is that according to sales figures, some people, maybe those who don't want to smoke in front of their children, are choosing to eat their cannabis instead.
Edibles saw one of the largest sales increases, especially mid to end of March. Edibles are a fairly discreet way to consume. It's very convenient.
Industries like alcohol and gambling are called counter-cyclical. It means they do well when the economy does poorly.
I think what we're seeing is that cannabis is even more counter-cyclical, and that as the economy's kind of pulled back, I think we're seeing growth levels in cannabis that are outpacing what we've seen in terms of increase in alcohol consumption.
This 420 is not much for getting together, but bad times for the nation may also be good times for the cannabis industry.
Facebook has released its first map showing self-reported coronavirus symptoms by county in the U.S. Mark Zuckerberg says the goal here is to give state officials a sense of where they may need to direct more resources. NBC News senior media reporter Dylan Byers joins me now. And Dylan, how is Facebook collecting all this data?
Well, voluntarily, which is the one thing that Facebook, I think more than any other company, is well positioned to do. The one thing Facebook has that no other company has, of course, is its scale, is the fact that it has well north of 2 billion people around the world using it. So while other big tech companies like Apple and Google, which actually make the hardware that we keep in our pockets and wear around our wrists, well, they are going to spend the next few months working on what's known as contact tracing, which is our phones will actually be able to provide the data that lets us know if we've been in contact with people who have had coronavirus. What Facebook is doing is trying to get ahead of it as best they can by giving people the ability to fill out a survey if they're feeling symptoms, which, as Mark Zuckerberg points out in a new Washington Post editorial, symptoms are usually the precursor to actually having the disease. Then we can begin to at least get a better picture of where these high exposure areas are, where federal resources should be allocated, where public health officials should be directing their attention, and then ultimately, hopefully, where and when we can begin to reopen parts of the American economy.
You say it's voluntary. Are there still any privacy concerns here with any other data that Facebook's releasing right now to fight the coronavirus?
Yeah, so there are privacy concerns, and what I would say is those privacy concerns are long-term. At the moment, what you're talking about, whether you're talking about this effort by Facebook or the effort by Apple and Google that's coming down the line, these are voluntary efforts, and the data that they are using is anonymized and aggregated, which means that it doesn't really give you insights into what any one specific individual is doing. Now, that hardly allays the concerns of privacy advocates who say that over time, this kind of data could be manipulated and perhaps the data would become not so anonymous, and in the wrong hands, governments, other bodies could use that data for nefarious purposes. I think for the time being, in the immediate, public health officials see this as such an added benefit to the work that they're doing. And when, the debate right now is over how many lives you can save, it sort of puts that privacy concern on the back burner. And I think by the same token, that's exactly what the privacy folks are worried about, is that we are going to be so eager to use contact tracing now that we are going to forgo the expectations that we have for personal privacy later down the line when the pandemic is over.
Is this something that's going on just here in the U.S. or is it international?
So all of these efforts are international. Again, the companies that can do it, the companies that have scale, are those Silicon Valley companies. So what Apple and Google are doing will be international. The phones that they make account for basically all but a few of the smartphones that exist around the world. Facebook started rolling this out on a county by county basis here in the United States, but starting this week, they're going to be offering that same survey in countries around the world, and they're going to try and therefore provide us with a sort of sense globally of how this pandemic is spreading.
All right, Dylan, we haven't seen you in a while. It's so great to have you here. Wonderful to see you, and thanks for the update.